Guys, we are live in the digital newsroom here. I'm Molly Nevola with T, my buddy here, hanging out in the digital. Guys, I hope you're having a great Tuesday already. It's the 22nd of August, and we are, recapping, I guess, eclipse coverage. We did a whole special yesterday on solar eclipse. You might recognize, check it out, this background that we had up there yesterday. Solar eclipse coverage mania. We did so much with it. T, did you catch any of it?
Yes. It was amazing. It was very breathtaking.
Informative. We were basically trying to sort of mix together. I don't know if some of you guys that are on caught this on our website or on our YouTube and whatnot. But we were trying to mix up coverage. We had a lot of reporters in the field and different places around the DMV area. And then we had the people in who traveled to the Path of Totality, which was so cool. So I don't know if it's too much at this point because we've been talking about it for a long time. I'm going to throw this back to the White House behind me. But we're in the DC newsroom, guys, and we're back. And I'm going to recap it just a little bit because it was just so thrilling and exciting. We got some really cool shots out of it from our photojournalist, Van Applegate, who was down in the Columbia, South Carolina area. His pictures are insane. So let's check them out right here. Let's just go to these straight up that he tweeted out. So this is one of the shots that he got using a filter on his camera lens, and it's just incredible.
That is crazy.
Right?
That's insane.
You can see there's a little caption there. The view that he and Mike Thomas had was well worth the sleepless night to get here. Thanks for following. A few more here that he captured, I think, that he was rolling on this video and then was able to still shot. Look at that.
Wow.
Isn't that insane? So what that is sort of, at least a portion of that, maybe before it sort of lights up even more, it's called the diamond ring effect, where it's just, the eclipse is just ending and that little shine of light comes off the side and it looks like a diamond ring. And it was so stunningly gorgeous. Couple more from far away.
Oh.
I know. I'm not quite sure. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost enough for me to see his pictures like that instead of see it myself. I was bummed out that I actually couldn't even get outside to watch a glimpse of it. You went outside.
I was able to go outside in the parking.
Let's get your little feedback.
It was very, it was just breathtaking. So I borrowed somebody's
these.
Yeah, the glasses from someone else.
I never got to wear them, guys.
When I looked up, it was so from here we basically got to see like a crescent moon almost.
So cool, but really there was the crescent sun.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, crescent sun.
Right.
It was that was I just stared at it for maybe like a minute.
Yeah, I bet. With the glasses.
Mm-hmm. And then around us it was very dark. It got a little dark. Yeah, it was like it was just incredible.
So interesting. So I guess what's happening today, guys? We're not gonna do too much with the eclipse. We're kind of done with that. At least I feel like I am. Although there's like I said, there's so many artistic photos out there. So many cool things to kind of recap. I wanted to make sure we showed you those from Van. But if you missed our stream, you're interested in kind of seeing how it all played out, you can catch it on our events page, Fox 5 DC here on YouTube. We also played it on our Facebook page. You can scroll down to find that live event from yesterday. So that was our big day yesterday. A lot of guests in here, a lot of interesting stuff. I hope that you guys were able to join on. If you are on the stream now and you're just watching, welcome. We want to engage with you. Feel free to chat with us here and mention whenever you have any comments or questions, and we'll try to answer them for you today in the newsroom. We're going to go down to Joint Base Andrews now. President Trump is leaving for Phoenix tonight. Did you guys know this? There's sort of a rally. They're calling it a rally, a meet and greet, or rather a rally at the Phoenix Convention Center tonight in Arizona. Vice President Mike Pence is going to introduce him. We haven't seen a lot of Trump lately. At least I haven't brought any live events to the show lately. He's been on vacation and now kind of back in the swing of things. But they're saying it's possibly a campaign-style rally in Phoenix, so lots of coverage there. Possibly some protests. I'm sure there's going to be a lot going on there tonight. So we're going to keep an eye on our Phoenix station as well. They also run a live channel throughout the day. And before that, he'll be in Yuma, Arizona, the Marine base there, and he'll be doing a meet and greet with Marines there. That's later in the evening, so more towards your dinner time, at least on East Coast time. Today itself, not a ton of politics stuff coming up. If we have anything live and breaking, we'll jump right there for you guys. But for now, let's check it out. Let's go down to Joint Base Andrews. This is a live shot where President Trump is about to take off. Let's check in. Guys, you're looking at a live shot of Joint Base Andrews, and President Trump is going to Arizona today. He has a meet and greet with Marines, also a bump shot of the White House, just a live look at what it looks like right now in D.C. But I want to play out, in case you guys missed it yesterday, President Trump later in the evening had a speech outlining a new strategy for the war in Afghanistan. He was at Fort Myer, Virginia, and it was sort of a later evening event. Maybe you caught it on social media, or clips of it from the nightly news somewhere. But in case you didn't get it in its entirety, I'm going to play it out, just the raw footage that we had of it last night. Once again, this is a military base just a few miles from the White House. And he sort of had a lot of things to say about keeping, really, and ramping up military presence in Afghanistan. So I'm going to play that out for you guys next.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please be seated. Vice President Pence, Secretary of State Tillerson, members of the Cabinet, General Dunford, Deputy Secretary Shannon, and Colonel Duggan. Most especially, thank you to the men and women of Fort Myer and every member of the United States military at home and abroad. We send our thoughts and prayers to the families of our brave sailors who were injured and lost after a tragic collision at sea, as well as to those conducting the search and recovery efforts. I am here tonight to lay out our path forward in Afghanistan and South Asia. But before I provide the details of our new strategy, I want to say a few words to the service members here with us tonight, to those watching from their posts, and to all Americans listening at home. Since the founding of our republic, our country has produced a special class of heroes whose selflessness, courage, and resolve is unmatched in human history. American patriots from every generation have given their last breath on the battlefield for our nation and for our freedom. Through their lives, and though their lives were cut short, in their deeds they achieved total immortality. By following the heroic example of those who fought to preserve our republic, we can find the inspiration our country needs to unify, to heal, and to remain one nation under God. The men and women of our military operate as one team with one shared mission and one shared sense of purpose. They transcend every line of race, ethnicity, creed, and color to serve together and sacrifice together in absolutely perfect cohesion. That is because all service members are brothers and sisters. They're all part of the same family. It's called the American family. They take the same oath, fight for the same flag, and live according to the same law. They are bound together by common purpose, mutual trust, and selfless devotion to our nation and to each other. The soldier understands what we as a nation too often forget, that a wound inflicted upon a single member of our community is a wound inflicted upon us all. When one part of America hurts, we all hurt. And when one citizen suffers an injustice, we all suffer together. Loyalty to our nation demands loyalty to one another. Love for America requires love for all of its people. When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate. The young men and women we send to fight our wars abroad deserve to return to a country that is not at war with itself at home. We cannot remain a force for peace in the world if we are not at peace with each other. As we send our bravest to defeat our enemies overseas, and we will always win, let us find the courage to heal our divisions within. Let us make a simple promise to the men and women we ask to fight in our name, that when they return home from battle, they will find a country that has renewed the sacred bonds of love and loyalty that unite us together as one. Thanks to the vigilance and skill of the American military and of our many allies throughout the world, horrors on the scale of September 11th, nobody can ever forget that, have not been repeated on our shores. But we must acknowledge the reality I am here to talk about tonight, that nearly 16 years after September 11th attacks, after the extraordinary sacrifice of blood and treasure, the American people are weary of war without victory. Nowhere is this more evident than with the war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history, 17 years. I share the American people's frustration. I also share their frustration over a foreign policy that has spent too much time, energy, money, and most importantly, lives, trying to rebuild countries in our own image instead of pursuing our security interests above all other considerations. That is why, shortly after my inauguration, I directed Secretary of Defense Mattis and my national security team to undertake a comprehensive review of all strategic options in Afghanistan and South Asia. My original instinct was to pull out, and historically, I like following my instincts. But all my life, I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. In other words, when you're President of the United States. So I studied Afghanistan in great detail and from every conceivable angle. After many meetings over many months, we held our final meeting last Friday at Camp David with my cabinet and generals to complete our strategy. I arrived at three fundamental conclusions about America's core interests in Afghanistan. First, our nation must seek an honorable and enduring outcome worthy of the tremendous sacrifices that have been made, especially the sacrifices of lives. The men and women who serve our nation in combat deserve a plan for victory. They deserve the tools they need and the trust they have earned to fight and to win. Second, the consequences of a rapid exit are both predictable and unacceptable. 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in our history, was planned and directed from Afghanistan because that country was ruled by a government that gave comfort and shelter to terrorists. A hasty withdrawal would create a vacuum that terrorists, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, would instantly fill, just as happened before September 11th. And as we know, in 2011, America hastily and mistakenly withdrew from Iraq. As a result, our hard-won gains slipped back into the hands of terrorist enemies. Our soldiers watched as cities they had fought for and bled to liberate, and won, were occupied by a terrorist group called ISIS. The vacuum we created by leaving too soon gave safe haven for ISIS to spread, to grow, recruit, and launch attacks. We cannot repeat in Afghanistan the mistake our leaders made in Iraq. Third and finally, I concluded that the security threats we face in Afghanistan and the broader region are immense. Today, 20 U.S. designated foreign terrorist organizations are active in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the highest concentration in any region, anywhere in the world. For its part, Pakistan often gives.
Hey, Mark, good to see you on the stream. What's up? Molly here in the digital newsroom. I'm just replaying this speech from President Trump. yesterday. He made these words at Fort Myer, Virginia, just a few miles from the White House, actually, here, and outlines a new strategy for war in Afghanistan. So in case you missed it, guys, this was last night, yesterday evening. And then I'm also concurrently playing this live picture right here under me of, there's Marine One. We also saw Air Force One. President Trump is on his way to Phoenix, Arizona. First, he's stopping in Yuma, Arizona, the Marine base there, for a little meet and greet with some of the Marines there. And then he has a rally at the Phoenix Convention Center. So all that to say, I'm just kind of mixing together some stuff for today, some live news, some taped news from yesterday. So we'll jump back into his speech, and then we'll check back in with you guys here in the newsroom. But Mark, thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to keep commenting on our stream. Looks like we see the Marine exiting or doing their procession there for Marine One. I'm sure we'll see the president soon.
Confronting of all of the problems of today and extremely predictable consequences of a hasty withdrawal. We need look no further than last week's vile, vicious attack in Barcelona to understand that terror groups will stop at nothing to commit the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children. You saw it for yourself. Horrible. As I outlined in my speech in Saudi Arabia 3 months ago, America and our partners are committed to stripping terrorists of their territory, cutting off their funding, and exposing the false allure of their evil ideology. Terrorists who slaughter innocent people will find no glory in this life or the next. They are nothing but thugs and criminals and predators and, that's right, losers. Working alongside our allies, we will break their will, dry up their recruitment, keep them from crossing our borders, and yes, we will defeat them, and we will defeat them handily. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, America's interests are clear. We must stop the resurgence of safe havens that enable terrorists to threaten America, and we must prevent nuclear weapons and materials from coming into the hands of terrorists and being used against us or anywhere in the world, for that matter. But to prosecute this war, we will learn from history. As a result of our comprehensive review, American strategy in Afghanistan and South Asia will change dramatically in the following ways. A core pillar of our new strategy is a shift from a time-based approach to one based on conditions. I've said it many times, how counterproductive it is for the United States to announce in advance the dates we intend to begin or end military options. We will not talk about numbers of troops or our plans for further military activities. Conditions on the ground, not arbitrary timetables, will guide our strategy from now on. America's enemies must never know our plans or believe they can wait us out. I will not say when we are going to attack, but attack we will. Another fundamental pillar of our new strategy is the integration of all instruments of American power, diplomatic, economic, and military, toward a successful outcome. Someday, after an effective military effort, perhaps it will be possible to have a political settlement that includes elements of the Taliban in Afghanistan. But nobody knows if or when that will ever happen. America will continue its support for the Afghan government and the Afghan military as they confront the Taliban in the field. Ultimately, it is up to the people of Afghanistan to take ownership of their future, to govern their society, and to achieve an everlasting peace. We are a partner and a friend, but we will not dictate to the Afghan people how to live or how to govern their own complex society. We are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists. The next pillar of our new strategy is to change the approach and how to deal with Pakistan. We can no longer be silent about Pakistan's safe havens for terrorist organizations, the Taliban, and other groups that pose a threat to the region and beyond. Pakistan has much to gain from partnering with our effort in Afghanistan. It has much to lose by continuing to harbor criminals and terrorists. In the past, Pakistan has been a valued partner. Our militaries have worked together against common enemies. The Pakistani people have suffered greatly from terrorism and extremism. We recognize those contributions.
Guys, we're going to hold off on this speech from yesterday for just a second and take you over to California, Berkeley, California, if you're watching with us for another live event. Right now there's an anti-hate rally going on with Barbara Lee. She's a Democrat running for Congress in California, and this is live coming in from California from our Fox station. So let's go over there and we'll hold off on President Trump. You can see still a live shot of Joint Base Andrews there as he departs for Arizona. We'll get rid of this speech from yesterday and take you back there maybe later, but let's go over to this live event in Berkeley, California.
I was born in El Paso, Texas, and I remember vividly the days of Jim Crow. Here in Berkeley and the East Bay, we understand that history, and we are working to create a more just and equal society. That's why this planned demonstration is so offensive. Now, I have seen the kind of world that these demonstrators want to recreate. And while it's true that we still have a long way to go in the struggle for equality, we simply cannot go back to the days of old. The Southern Poverty Law Center has measured an increase in hate incidents and hate crimes since Trump's campaign began, and especially since his election. Believe you me, those who would seek a return to white supremacy in this country are feeling emboldened in a way that we have not seen in a long time. But there has been another trend since the election that's really inspiring, and that is the peaceful demonstration of millions of Americans resisting the rise of the alt-right in America. They are bringing what I call street heat. We saw it the weekend of the inauguration with millions of Americans from all backgrounds taking part in the women's marches across the country and throughout the world. These were beautiful demonstrations of solidarity where no one was hurt, there was no violence, and the collective voice of our nation proudly proclaimed that our values would not be easily washed away. We saw it again this past weekend in Boston, where tens of thousands of peaceful demonstrators stood strong and spoke out against a white supremacist rally in that city. In the wake of what happened in Charlottesville, our residents are understandably concerned about the potential for additional violence resulting from this demonstration this weekend, and they are angry that organizers would hold it soon after Heather Heyer and 2 public safety officers were killed, and so many were injured in the violence there. I understand the concern and that anger. I share with my constituents the need to speak out against bigots and racists as I have my entire life. In times like these, I often, throughout my life, take solace and inspiration from the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." And so while we stand together to reject the hateful worldview of those who demonstrated in Charlottesville and in Boston and who plan to come here to Berkeley this weekend, let us stand together united by love and a deep commitment to justice and nonviolence. Let us demonstrate our progressive Berkeley values and how we respond to this challenge. This is the home of the peace movement. Let us be peaceful. This is the home of some of our diverse communities in the country. Let us show that strength in our diversity. No outside band of instigators can threaten our values, so we must remain true and reject hatred, intolerance, and bigotry. We will not let anyone turn back the clock on progress, not these demonstrators, and certainly not this president. Regardless of his failure to lead, the people of this nation are good, tolerant, and loving people, and we will speak clearly when the president fails to do so. By doing so, we will proclaim that Berkeley and the East Bay stands united against hate, and we will join our voices to the national chorus that is growing against intolerance. So thank you again, and I want to thank all of our elected officials for staying woke. Stay woke.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Lee. It's my pleasure to introduce our state senator, Nancy Skinner.
Thank you, Mayor Arreguín. Thank you, all of the elected officials, Congresswoman Lee, and the rest of us assembled today. And I join with all of the officials here. Racist, anti-Semitic, and hate-fueled terrorist acts taken by many of these in these white supremacist and neo-Nazi groups are not welcome here in Berkeley, in our state, or anywhere in our nation. We, all of us here, we honor and defend everyone's right to free speech. But for those who come here for violence, there will be consequences. I'm reminded yesterday by our Alameda County DA O'Malley's remarks, where she mentioned that the very public and aggressive hate-fueled conduct that is expressed, that we saw in Charlottesville, that we've seen now at least 3 times in Berkeley, that we've seen in many places across the country, that is expressed by these groups, has heightened the moral imperative for us to do what is right. When they go low, we go high. All right. And we know that if no one shows up to their events, then they have no one to incite violence against. So those of us who do not want to see the violence, we will ignore them as they legitimately should be ignored. We will not legitimate them. They need us and our presence to be legitimized. We will not legitimize them. And so I join with the mayor and others to say, do not come here to Civic Center Park. Do not bite their bait and give them any circumstances. If they must do violence, then they can do it against themselves. I've introduced legislation, SB 630, to strengthen California's hate crime law so that the hateful acts of these individuals and these type of groups can be prosecuted fully and appropriately. Let me explain. SB 630 closes a loophole that exists in California law and many of the hate crime laws across the country. And I'll give you the explicit example. The purpose of SB 630 is to close that loophole that those who commit hate acts, like the driver who drove into the crowd in Charlottesville, you know that his intention was a hateful intention. He didn't care who he hit, but the fact that he hit Heather Heyer so far has caused him to escape the consequence of a hate crime charge because Heather is not, as far as we know, specifically protected by our hate crime laws. So SB 630 closes that loophole so that such crimes can be appropriately charged and fully prosecuted. I've also introduced 2 resolutions, SJR 13 and SR 55. And those resolutions are modeled after the actions that were recently taken by the state of Illinois. And those resolutions condemn these terrorist acts of the white supremacist and neo-Nazi groups and the individuals in those groups. And it urges federal, state, and local law enforcement to prosecute those acts under our terrorism and hate crime laws. And if given that those groups and those individuals' intent is to terrorize our communities, then it makes sense for them to be prosecuted as terrorists. So I join with all of my colleagues here, and I urge everyone, do not give them the dignity Yes, express your free speech and our legitimate opposition to their activities through other means, but stay away from this Civic Center Park this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Skinner, for your leadership and for introducing that important legislation. The city of Berkeley strongly supports your efforts. I want to give our district attorney, Nancy O'Malley, an opportunity to say a few words, and thank you for joining us, District Attorney.
Thank you and good morning. I just want to say a few words. First of all and foremost, we stand very firmly and strongly with our colleagues here on the dais, as well as our community, to reject the hate, the hateful conduct, the hateful speech, and the hateful behavior that is going on not only across the country, but filtrating into our community. For that reason and many more, I strongly support the legislation that Senator Skinner is introducing. We've had a hate hotline for several months now, and we're able to look at the calls that we've received to see circumstances where hate crime and hate conduct was committed against people who didn't necessarily fall within the protected class, but nevertheless stood shoulder to shoulder with those who did, supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting other organizations, our LGBT community. Those individuals were also hurt by the hate crime and hate conduct. This legislation that Senator Skinner has introduced will allow individuals who are standing in support of and advocating for the protected class groups as they stand against hate and against discrimination and against the rhetoric that is inciting so much hateful, violent conduct. Very appreciative of the leadership here. I'm proud to be part of this community that has taken such a firm stance, united firm stance against what's happening across this country and stopping it from happening in our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, District Attorney O'Malley. So I'm honored to introduce our State Assembly member, Tony Thurman.
Thank you, Mayor Ageen. Good morning to the people of Berkeley. I'm honored to stand with my elected colleagues here on behalf of the people of Berkeley. Berkeley is one of our greatest cities in this district, in this state, and in this nation. And one of the things that makes this city so great is its diversity, in that we love the diversity that this city represents. And it is an honor to stand with our congresswomen and our legislators and our DA to say that we join the campaign of Berkeley United Against Hate, because there is never a place for hate, and there is no place here. I would invite you to think about the impact that the events that have occurred in Charlottesville have on our children. As you watch the images, you will see that many of the people who are bringing these awful hate acts are themselves young people who have been confused, who have been manipulated, whose frustration has been manipulated to allow them to join with hateful doctrine. And I say hateful doctrine because as children have come to me and asked, how could anyone march around with the Ku Klux Klan or put on a hood? That organization symbolizes one thing: hate, terror, torture, and death. Thousands of African Americans and Jewish people tortured and killed. How could anyone raise a Heil Hitler salute or identify with a neo-Nazi organization, organizations that represent only one thing: death to 6 million Jews? These organizations terrorize many in our country, but they terrorize our children. And we must take an opportunity to do as you heard today, to legislate. And I'm very honored and will be happy to support the legislation that you heard from Senator Skinner to enforce and strengthen our ability to enforce action against those who perpetrate hate. And we should legislate, but we must also educate our children so that their minds are not lost to the false truths that are being provided by these groups that say that they are right, when in fact, all they do is inflict harm and terror and hurt. And for these reasons, many of my elected colleagues are coming together tomorrow in the California State Capitol to talk about how do we approach hate acts and hate speech and racism from the standpoint of education. How do we use our educational system to talk about race, to talk about the impact of hate speech? And when hate speech rises its head in our communities, what do we do about it? I, like you, have had people in my family call many racial expletives, have had people use hate speech in many ways that will terrorize our community. It is incumbent upon us to make sure that we talk about this and that we use our educational system to teach our kids tolerance and understanding and the benefits that we have from having a beautiful and diverse community such as Berkeley. So it's an honor to stand with this community in the Berkeley Against Hate campaign and to raise my voice to say that we don't allow hate speech, we don't legitimize it. We have a president who has legitimized hate speech and the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis. And for those reasons, I'll be introducing a resolution calling on our United States Congress to censure the president for his action, for his failure to lead as the leader of the free world, to understand that he has a responsibility to bring us together, that he represents the most powerful position in the world, in the free world, and that he must use that to promote peace and tolerance and understanding. If he doesn't understand that, let our actions here in Berkeley send a message to him and to the world that there's no place for hate. It's an honor to join my colleagues here in the Berkeley Campaign United Against Hate. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Assemblymember Thurman. I'd like to introduce Assemblymember Rob Bonta from Assembly District 18.
Thank you, Mayor Adegin. It's an honor to be here with my amazing East Bay delegation of leaders standing united against hate and standing shoulder to shoulder speaking with one voice. And as we have all seen in recent days, tragically and sadly, there have been acts of hate and violence throughout this country, from Charlottesville to right here in the East Bay. We've seen a Jewish temple vandalized here in the East Bay. We've seen pamphlets peddling messages of hate and violence laid on the doorsteps of our neighbors. And we have come here today to declare loudly and clearly and without a shadow of a doubt that the East Bay and California condemns hate, that we condemn bigotry, that we condemn intolerance, and that we condemn violence. As we know, California is the most diverse state in the nation. We are a beautifully diverse state, a beautifully diverse Bay Area, and diversity is our strength. Here in the Bay Area and in California, we stand for inclusion. We stand for respect. We stand for love. And we stand for the dignity of all people. And given the recent actions that we've seen across this country and here in the Bay Area and what's coming this weekend, we will not be deterred. We will not be divided. We know that we are stronger when we are together and that we will move forward together or not at all. So let's continue to support one another. Let's continue to lift each other up. Let's stay true to our values of inclusion and respect and love, and let's stand united against hate. Thank you.
And we're happy to have our
to say one thing, that we follow the First Amendment of the Constitution, and that is to allow for free speech. Matter of fact, Mario Savio started the free speech movement here in the city of Berkeley, and we stand on that of free speech. But we've also come together to say that we're here against hate. And hate is not a new phenomenon. It is one that has been with us for a long time. Even today, the numbers say that we have at least a 10% increase in the number of hate crimes that are reported here in California alone. 35% against the Hispanic community alone, an increase of hate crimes right in our own community. So the question really is, why after 50 years of the civil rights movement are we still here talking about race and hate? And it's because of the fact that we ourselves have not been vigilant. We ourselves own a part of the responsibility. We ourselves are going to have to come together as mosques, as temple, as churches on a Sunday across religions to talk about race and to be against hate. We ourselves in our own community own some of the responsibility to fight this hate. So on Sunday, it shouldn't be just one day to come out and speak against hate. It should be a day in which we say we repudiate those who come from outside our community into our community to disrupt, to create havoc. We don't care if they're neo-Nazis or we don't care if they're anti-people. Our community ourselves should be the ones talking about this issue. And if we in fact do that, then we'll be able to take care of this issue. Let me just end by a quick quote that was given by A. Philip Randolph. Women and men often hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they do not know each other. They do not know each other because they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate because they are separated. We're going to have to take care of the separation while we still focus on Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Carson, for all your leadership. And I just want to acknowledge the members of the City Council that are here, Councilmember Ben Bartlett, Councilmember Cheryl Davila, Councilmember Sophie Hahn, and Councilmember Linda Mayo. Thank you for joining us. And the whole Berkeley City Council stands firmly against hate and stands for the values of equity, of tolerance, of inclusivity, and justice that make Berkeley such a trailblazing progressive community. And we will continue to stand for those values. We believe very strongly in the right of people to express their First Amendment rights peacefully, and we will continue to protect those rights by also taking a firm stand against hate in our community. So that concludes our press conference. Thank you for joining us. We'll be available for interviews, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll be doing individual interviews with members of the elected leadership.
We need to know, as residents of Berkeley, please, I live 5 blocks from here. I'm going to be demonstrating that day, and if you're saying don't come to the park, I need to know, and many of the 50 organizations that are planning to demonstrate really want to know what the city and the police are doing to coordinate with those groups to make sure that we have a strong, unified message that is not close to the park. Because if what's going to happen instead, if the police are just keeping us from getting in the park, there's going to be a big mess. So I need to know, and many of these organizations need to know that you are really working with them to create an alternative to what you're requesting.
So I'll just say very, very briefly that we have been planning for weeks for not just the rally in the park, but for the counter demonstration that is planned on the Crescent, which is going to be separated from the park as a nonviolent alternative. We are doing everything we can, working with different law enforcement agencies, working with the University of California, and our state and federal leaders to make sure that we have, and community groups as well. We've had meetings with some of the organizers of some of the demonstrations, and we're doing everything we can to keep the peace, to make sure that people have the opportunity to express their views, whatever their views are, and whatever either for or against the hate groups that are coming into our city, and also make sure that we can prevent violence and we can keep our community safe. So we take that responsibility very seriously, and we're prepared to do everything we can to keep Berkeley safe this Sunday.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you looked into it, but at this point there's nothing to stop you from issuing the permits, right? It's a done deal. There's nothing legally you can do now.
There was no permit that was actually applied for, so our understanding is that there's going to be a protest in the park, and so the question is, will we be prepared? We will be prepared, and we will keep our community safe.
Legally, you can do that.
Where are you getting information?
So I'm happy to do individual interviews or take questions with members of the press, and then.
Just where are you getting information that this is a white nationalist rally? Because we just heard from the organizer who denounced white nationalists, said they're not welcome at the event. Yeah. On the page, it doesn't say anything about a white nationalist rally, just said it's an anti-Marxism rally. I know with Charlottesville, obviously, things are very sensitive, but where are you guys getting that information that it is a white nationalist rally we're talking about?
Well, certainly in social media, there's some of the very groups that came to Berkeley over the past few months that have promoted, hate-filled messages, they have said that they are coming to Berkeley. And so we don't know how many people, but we will be prepared for whatever crowd is going to come, and we will be prepared to keep our community safe.
Do you think that this rally is associated with those groups? Because we just talked to the organizers.
From what we're seeing, people like Richard Spencer and Kyle Chapman and some of the very sort of alt-right leaders that have been in Berkeley have said that they intend to come this weekend. We don't know how many people are going to come. We have to be prepared as a community to keep our community safe, and we will do that this weekend.
Isn't one way to do that to have, like
Thank
they
you.
did
Thank
in
you very much.
Boston? 40,000 people came out in Boston for a non-violent demonstration of love and solidarity against Nazis. That is what people in Berkeley and San Francisco need to do, and that is what many people are planning to do.
So you're against them saying stay home.
Allie. They need to know what they're doing, what they're about, what they're coming here for. That's what we need to do. We not to stay in hands, you know what? Look, Trump got the North Korea got their bomb. California.
There you go, guys. Lots of eyes on this sort of thing, these anti-hate rallies that we've seen across the country, really, and here in Berkeley. You can hear some of the protesting at the end there. We heard from Congresswoman Barbara Lee in California and a couple other state senators and officials in Berkeley. It looks like we're just leaving this feed now. They just froze it up. So that is it for that. But let us know what you think, guys, if you have any thoughts on this. Perhaps something rung true for you, or maybe you're watching from that side of the country and you've been aware of this sort of thing and the events in Berkeley, California. Let's bring it back in the newsroom, guys. I'm Molly Nevola here in our digital studio. You can see the White House behind me, a little live shot. It's a live look at the White House. If you look closely, you can see a person in front there walking across. We are following the live news and breaking events of the day. So if you're just joining us, welcome to our feed. You can follow along on our social media, guys. We are Fox 5 DC on every platform. Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all of it. And we want to hear from you. So engage with me and let me know any of your thoughts or comments. We're going to go back now to President Trump's speech from last night. In case you missed it, nothing new right now from him as he is on the way to Phoenix, Arizona. We just saw a live shot of Air Force One. And this was his speech yesterday. He was outlining a new strategy for the war in Afghanistan. And it happened sort of later in the evening. So if you missed something last night or social media, maybe you were tuned out, maybe the eclipse took all of your energy yesterday and you were done with looking at digital stuff. I know I was after everything. It was a long day, but it was really, really interesting. But a lot of pictures and photos and videos and stuff all jumbled together to bring that cool eclipse event to you guys. And it was a big day for science news, which was awesome. But in the name of politics, we'll go back to this speech from last night, finish it out in case you guys missed it, from Fort Myer, Virginia. This was last night, President Trump outlining new strategy. If we have other breaking news, guys, or anything that comes up, we will bring that to you as well and make sure that we jump in with anything that's live. So stay with us here. But again, this is, in case you missed it, from last night, President Trump speaking to military down in Fort Myer, Virginia.
Secretary of State Tillerson, members of the Cabinet, General Dunford, Deputy Secretary Shanahan, and Colonel Duggan. Most especially, thank you to the men and women of Fort Myer and every member of the United States military at home and abroad. We send our thoughts and prayers to the families of our brave sailors who were injured and lost after a tragic collision at sea, as well as to those conducting the search and recovery efforts. I am here tonight to lay out our path forward in Afghanistan and South Asia. But before I provide the details of our new strategy, I want to say a few words to the service members here with us tonight to those watching from their posts, and to all Americans listening at home. Since the founding of our republic, our country has produced a special class of heroes whose selflessness, courage, and resolve is unmatched in human history. American patriots from every generation have given their last breath on the battlefield for our nation and for our freedom. Through their lives, and though their lives were cut short, in their deeds they achieved total immortality. By following the heroic example of those who fought to preserve our republic, we can find the inspiration our country needs to unify, to heal, and to remain one nation under God. The men and women of our military operate as one team with one shared mission and one shared sense of purpose. They transcend every line of race, ethnicity, creed, and color to serve together and sacrifice together in absolutely perfect cohesion. That is because all service members are brothers and sisters. They're all part of the same family. It's called the American family. They take the same oath, fight for the same flag, and live according to the same law. They are bound together by common purpose, mutual trust, and selfless devotion to our nation and to each other. The soldier understands what we as a nation too often forget, that a wound inflicted upon a single member of our community is a wound inflicted upon us all. When one part of America hurts, we all hurt. And when one citizen suffers an injustice, we all suffer together. Loyalty to our nation demands loyalty to one another. Love for America requires love for all of its people. When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate. The young men and women we send to fight our wars abroad deserve to return to a country that is not at war with itself at home. We cannot remain a force for peace in the world if we are not at peace with each other. As we send our bravest to defeat our enemies overseas, and we will always win, let us find the courage to heal our divisions within. Let us make a simple promise to the men and women we ask to fight in our name, that when they return home from battle, they will find a country that has renewed the sacred bonds of love and loyalty that unite us together as one. Thanks to the vigilance and skill of the American military and of our many allies throughout the world, horrors on the scale of September 11th, nobody can ever forget that, have not been repeated on our shores. But we must acknowledge the reality I am here to talk about tonight, that nearly 16 years after September 11th attacks, after the extraordinary sacrifice of blood and treasure, the American people are weary of war without victory. Nowhere is this more evident than with the war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history, 17 years. I share the American people's frustration. I also share their frustration over a foreign policy that has spent too much time, energy, money, and most importantly, lives, trying to rebuild countries in our own image instead of pursuing our security interests above all other considerations. That is why, shortly after my inauguration, I directed Secretary of Defense Mattis and my national security team to undertake a comprehensive review of all strategic options in Afghanistan and South Asia. My original instinct was to pull out, and historically, I like following my instincts. But all my life, I've heard that decisions are much different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. In other words, when you're President of the United States. So I studied Afghanistan in great detail and from every conceivable angle. After many meetings over many months, we held our final meeting last Friday at Camp David with my cabinet and generals to complete our strategy. I arrived at three fundamental conclusions about America's core interests in Afghanistan. First, our nation must seek an honorable and enduring outcome worthy of the tremendous sacrifices that have been made, especially the sacrifices of lives. The men and women who serve our nation in combat deserve a plan for victory. They deserve the tools they need and the trust they have earned to fight and to win. Second, the consequences of a rapid exit are both predictable and unacceptable. 9/11, the worst terrorist attack in our history, was planned and directed from Afghanistan because that country was ruled by a government that gave comfort and shelter to terrorists. A hasty withdrawal would create a vacuum that terrorists, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, would instantly fill, just as happened before September 11th. And as we know, in 2011, America hastily and mistakenly withdrew from Iraq. As a result, our hard-won gains slipped back into the hands of terrorist enemies. Our soldiers watched as cities they had fought for and bled to liberate and won were occupied by a terrorist group called ISIS. The vacuum we created by leaving too soon gave safe haven for ISIS to spread, to grow, recruit, and launch attacks. We cannot repeat in Afghanistan the mistake our leaders made in Iraq. Third and finally, I concluded that the security threats we face in Afghanistan and the broader region are immense. Today, 20 U.S. designated foreign terrorist organizations are active in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the highest concentration in any region, anywhere in the world. For its part, Pakistan often gives safe haven to agents of chaos, violence, and terror. The threat is worse because Pakistan and India are two nuclear-armed states whose tense relations threaten to spiral into conflict, and that could happen. No one denies that we have inherited a challenging and troubling situation in Afghanistan and South Asia, but we do not have the luxury of going back in time and making different or better decisions. When I became president, I was given a bad and very complex hand, but I fully knew what I was getting into, big and intricate problems. But one way or another, these problems will be solved. I'm a problem solver. And in the end, we will win. We must address the reality of the world as it exists right now, the threats we face, and the confronting of all of the problems of today, and extremely predictable consequences of a hasty withdrawal. We need look no further than last week's vile, vicious attack in Barcelona to understand that terror groups will stop at nothing to commit the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children. You saw it for yourself. Horrible. As I outlined in my speech in Saudi Arabia 3 months ago, America and our partners are committed to stripping terrorists of their territory, cutting off their funding, and exposing the false allure of their evil ideology. Terrorists who slaughter innocent people will find no glory in this life or the next. They are nothing but thugs and criminals and predators and, that's right, losers. Working alongside our allies, we will break their will, dry up their recruitment, keep them from crossing our borders, and yes, we will defeat them, and we will defeat them handily. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, America's interests are clear. We must stop the resurgence of safe havens that enable terrorists to threaten America, and we must prevent nuclear weapons and materials from coming into the hands of terrorists and being used against us or anywhere in the world for that matter. But to prosecute this war, we will learn from history. As a result of our comprehensive review, American strategy in Afghanistan and South Asia will change dramatically in the following ways. A core pillar of our new strategy is a shift from a time-based approach to one based on conditions. I've said it many times how counterproductive it is for the United States to announce in advance the dates we intend to begin or end military options. We will not talk about numbers of troops or our plans for further military activities. Conditions on the ground, not arbitrary timetables, will guide our strategy from now on. America's enemies must never know our plans or believe they can wait us out. I will not say when we are going to attack, but attack we will. Another fundamental pillar of our new strategy is the integration of all instruments of American power, diplomatic, economic, and military, toward a successful outcome. Someday, after an effective military effort, perhaps it will be possible to have a political settlement that includes elements of the Taliban in Afghanistan. But nobody knows if or when that will ever happen. America will continue its support for the Afghan government and the Afghan military as they confront the Taliban in the field. Ultimately, it is up to the people of Afghanistan to take ownership of their future, to govern their society, and to achieve an everlasting peace. We are a partner and a friend, but we will not dictate to the Afghan people how to live or how to govern their own complex society. We are not nation building again. We are killing terrorists. The next pillar of our new strategy is to change the approach and how to deal with Pakistan. We can no longer be silent about Pakistan's safe havens for terrorist organizations, the Taliban, and other groups that pose a threat to the region and beyond. Pakistan has much to gain from partnering with our effort in Afghanistan. It has much to lose by continuing to harbor criminals and terrorists. In the past, Pakistan has been a valued partner. Our militaries have worked together against common enemies. The Pakistani people have suffered greatly from terrorism and extremism. We recognize those contributions and those sacrifices. But Pakistan has also sheltered the same organizations that try every single day to kill our people. We have been paying Pakistan billions and billions of dollars. At the same time, they are housing the very terrorists that we are fighting. But that will have to change, and that will change immediately. No partnership can survive a country's harboring of militants and terrorists who target U.S. service members and officials. It is time for Pakistan to demonstrate its commitment to civilization, order, and to peace. Another critical part of the South Asia strategy for America is to further develop its strategic partnership with India, the world's largest democracy and a key security and economic partner of the United States. We appreciate India's important contributions to stability in Afghanistan, but India makes billions of dollars in trade with the United States, and we want them to help us more with Afghanistan, especially in the area of economic assistance and development. We are committed to pursuing our shared objectives for peace and security in South Asia and the broader Indo-Pacific region. Finally, my administration will ensure that you, the brave defenders of the American people, will have the necessary tools and rules of engagement to make this strategy work and work effectively and work quickly. I have already lifted restrictions the previous administration placed on our warfighters that prevented the Secretary of Defense and our commanders in the field from fully and swiftly waging battle against the enemy. Micromanagement from Washington, D.C. does not win battles. They are won in the field, drawing upon the judgment and expertise of wartime commanders and frontline soldiers, acting in real time with real authority and with a clear mission to defeat the enemy. That's why we will also expand authority for American armed forces to target the terrorist and criminal networks that sow violence and chaos throughout Afghanistan. These killers need to know they have nowhere to hide, that no place is beyond the reach of American might and American arms. Retribution will be fast and powerful. As we lift restrictions and expand authorities in the field, we are already seeing dramatic results in the campaign to defeat ISIS, including the liberation of Mosul in Iraq. Since my inauguration, we have achieved record-breaking success in that regard. We will also maximize sanctions and other financial and law enforcement actions against these networks to eliminate their ability to export terror. When America commits its warriors to battle, we must ensure they have every weapon to apply swift, decisive, and overwhelming force. Our troops will fight to win. We will fight to win. From now on, victory will have a clear definition: attacking our enemies, obliterating ISIS, crushing Al-Qaeda, preventing the Taliban from taking over Afghanistan, and stopping mass terror attacks against America before they emerge. We will ask our NATO allies and global partners to support our new strategy with additional troop and funding increases in line with our own. We are confident they will. Since taking office, I have made clear that our allies and partners must contribute much more money to our collective defense, and they have done so. In this struggle, the heaviest burden will continue to be borne by the good people of Afghanistan and their courageous armed forces. As the Prime Minister of Afghanistan has promised, we are going to participate in economic development to help defray the cost of this war to us. Afghanistan is fighting to defend and secure their country against the same enemies who threaten us. The stronger the Afghan security forces become, the less we will have to do. Afghans will secure and build their own nation and define their own future. We want them to succeed. but we will no longer use American military might to construct democracies in faraway lands or try to rebuild other countries in our own image. Those days are now over. Instead, we will work with allies and partners to protect our shared interests. We are not asking others to change their way of life, but to pursue common goals that allow our children to live better and safer lives. This principled realism will guide our decisions moving forward. Military power alone will not bring peace to Afghanistan or stop the terrorist threat arising in that country. But strategically applied force aims to create the conditions for a political process to achieve a lasting peace. America will work with the Afghan government as long as we see determination and progress. However, our commitment is not unlimited, and our support is not a blank check. The government of Afghanistan must carry their share of the military, political, and economic burden. The American people expect to see real reforms, real progress, and real results. Our patience is not unlimited. We will keep our eyes wide open. In abiding by the oath I took on January 20th, I will remain steadfast in protecting American lives and American interests. In this effort, we will make common cause with any nation that chooses to stand and fight alongside us against this global threat. Terrorists, take heed. America will never let up until you are dealt a lasting defeat. Under my administration, many billions of dollars more is being spent on our military, and this includes vast amounts being spent on our nuclear arsenal and missile defense. In every generation, we have faced down evil, and we have always prevailed. We prevailed because we know who we are and what we are fighting for. Not far from where we are gathered tonight, hundreds of thousands of America's greatest patriots lay in eternal rest at Arlington National Cemetery. There is more courage, sacrifice, and love in those hallowed grounds than in any other spot on the face of the earth. Many of those who have fought and died in Afghanistan enlisted in the months after September 11th, 2001. They volunteered for a simple reason. They loved America, and they were determined to protect her. Now we must secure the cause for which they gave their lives. We must unite to defend America from its enemies abroad. We must restore the bonds of loyalty among our citizens at home, and we must achieve an honorable and enduring outcome worthy of the enormous price that so many have paid. Our actions, and in months to come, all of them will honor the sacrifice of every fallen hero, every family who lost a loved one, and every wounded warrior who shed their blood in defense of our great nation. With our resolve, we will ensure that your service and that your families will bring about the defeat of our enemies and the arrival of peace. We will push onward to victory with power in our hearts, courage in our souls, and everlasting pride in each and every one of you. Thank you. May God bless our military, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, guys, I am back in the newsroom. Who caught that speech from yesterday? That was in Fort Myer, Virginia, and it was a good long one, almost like a half hour, outlining the war strategy in Afghanistan. Tonight, President Trump is over in Phoenix, guys, and people are already talking about that there are bound to be protests. I know our Phoenix station is covering that well for what's going on in Arizona as he has this trip to Arizona. He's going to be in Yuma, Arizona on the Marine base, and then at the Phoenix Convention Center downtown for his speech. So anyway, I'm curious to see who caught this speech yesterday, what you guys think. Aaron, what's up? Good to see you. Anybody else on the stream? Chat with me. Let me know what you want to talk about. We can talk about anything and answer any questions. And also let me know who was on for yesterday's stream. Did anybody catch my coverage of the eclipse? We were in this room yesterday with our special solar eclipse background and our cool transitions, and we brought you all of that yesterday, and it was really fun to be in here with so many different people, different reporters from our station, Fox 5 DC here. Our anchors helped out big time, our whole web team, everybody kind of doing the day for eclipse coverage, and it was really, really neat. And our photojournalist, Van Applegate, who was down in South Carolina with our weather guy, Mike Thomas, caught some really, really awesome pictures of the eclipse. I don't know if you guys saw these. He tweeted them out, but just some really cool, look at that one, shots that I wanted to show you. Just to recap.
Courtesy KSAZ.
And so it was a big day here, guys, as we did this coverage, and I'm curious to see who was on with me. If you're not a member of our channel, please do become one. Click the button that says subscribe and be part of us. You can see when we come up and get alerts on your phone for our coverage, our live coverage throughout the day. We're going to try to mix it up for you today, and right now I'm seeing that there's a little conference going on in Phoenix, Arizona, where President Trump is about to land, that area in Arizona, and it has to do with President Trump and the Confederate statues and that argument, that whole topic that's been a really hot topic since Charlottesville, the events in Charlottesville. So let's go over to Phoenix, see what's going on there.
President Trump, it's time for you to support the Voting Rights Advancement Act and protect everyone's right to vote. Governor Ducey, let's remove this memorial and say once and for all that we do not celebrate slavery or the government that fought to uphold such an ugly stain on our national honor. And now I'm going to turn it over to a man who has been an advocate for our students in this community, another great leader, Lawrence Robinson.
Well, I'm Lawrence Robinson. I'm on the Roosevelt Elementary Governing Board. It's a school district located here in Phoenix that serves kids who primarily come from backgrounds of poverty. And before I begin my remarks about why we do a disservice to those kids when we allow memorials of hate to stand, I'd like to thank Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, who for all of her years in the Congress and leadership here in Arizona has always stood for what is right. It's why the people of Arizona continue to support her. I want to also thank Representative Boulding, who has made the issue that is now on the national stage being discussed perhaps even down the street by our president today, one that first really came hold here in Arizona before really it was an issue anywhere else. So thank you for your leadership, Representative Boulding. So what are we teaching our kids? We went through an election in 2016 where we saw civility go out the door. We elected a president who has no tolerance, let alone acceptance for his fellow Americans. And we've lost the ability in the legislature, which we're standing right in front of, to discuss the real issues of the day. In our state legislature, we chose to adopt laws that were progressive. We gave women the right to vote here in this state before a lot of other states did. We allowed folks to live under a libertarian spirit where everyone had an opportunity, and we protected the least among us. But to protect memorials of hate, like the one that we're standing in front of, is bad for business. We have a governor, Governor Doug Ducey, who ran on making this state open for business. And to make a state like Arizona open for business, it has to be welcoming to everybody. We've learned that in our history. We were one of the few states that had to enact the MLK holiday on the ballot. It was a black eye for our state. It lost us many conventions and sports events, and it really put the people of Arizona and this economy behind. Similarly, because of the leadership of Representative Boulding and Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, we're now talking about removing these statues and memorials of hate. What's important to know is that Arizona has not gotten out of the shadow of SB 1070 and all of the other hateful acts that have passed here at the legislature. And this legislature has abdicated its duty to talk about what's important for business, but also for our kids. Look, when the president isn't someone to be looked up for, you gotta look more closer to home. Governor Ducey is that person. I believe that if he were to call on the legislature and to follow the lead of the elected leaders behind me, then he could put Arizona on the map once again for saying enough with the nonsense and the hate, enough with honoring traitors to our country. Let's pledge allegiance to a real symbol, our flag that unites us, not leave memorials of hate up that divide us and put us further behind. But most importantly, for those kids who are coming up, the kids who the majority of which in our Arizona schools are Latino, the kids who the majority of which are coming from lower economic backgrounds, the kids who may wonder what job they'll have in the future. Let's give them the opportunity to create a state that is united, a state that is ahead of the curve in our country, and a state that says enough with hateful memorials that went up a few years ago. Let's take those down and instead put memorials for the future and our kids up. And so I really want to thank everybody who has been leading on this issue, and let's just do the sensible thing and unite as a country against historical figures who try to divide and conquer our country.
We're happy to take any questions if anybody has some, and we'll sort out who answers them. And so come on up.
Are you asking the governor to just outright take this down, or do you want a discussion to start about this?
That's right.
So, quite frankly, the governor has taken a stand that he wants to pass the buck. He wants to pass the buck to a group of citizens that are part of two boards and commissions. The Legislative Governmental Law Commission, which is chaired by Mr. Kevin Domena. That commission has the ability to relocate this monument today. The governor also has the ability, he can take executive action to remove this today. We also have the National Geological and Historic Board of Names that has the ability today to rename the Jefferson Davis Memorial Highway. The governor, quite frankly, has decided, whether it's politically motivated or what, that he wants to pass the buck to citizens. In that same respect, the governor is unwilling to call on these commissions and these boards to meet so the public can have a chance to use their voice. So, quite frankly, the governor wants it both ways. He wants to say that he doesn't stand for hate and rhetoric, but at the same time, he's unwilling to do anything to allow the public to actually have its say, to say, again, we don't want these memorials, monuments, and highways of hate in our state.
Well, thank you all very much, and for withstanding this heat. It's not easy to be out here today, but thank you all very much. Have a good week.
Thank you.
So nice to see you. Oh, it's great to see you.
You got everything you need?
I can't believe I'm back in the city.
So guys, that's it from Phoenix, Arizona, where I guess it is blazingly hot, just like it is here. It was so hot when I left the newsroom yesterday after all the eclipse coverage, and it's going to be another hot one here today. But you probably are not, maybe you're watching from this area, but maybe you're not. And it looks like it's really hot just across the country. So hearing a little snippet there of the press conference regarding pulling down some of the Confederate statues. That's in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're waiting to kind of see if there are, what kind of protests actually do happen, what show up in regards to President Trump speaking at the Phoenix Convention Center later this evening. So that's tonight. We've been sort of just tracking some of the live stuff that's going on today, and there's not a whole lot, at least in political news or anything. We know Congress is in recess. It's a little slower these days in D.C. Here's a live shot of the White House that you see behind me. Same thing. And a live look at the Capitol Dome as well. We have a bump shot there. Windy day, but pretty hot today. So that's what we're expecting today. I was listening to the weather guys this morning go through some of that. If you guys caught the coverage yesterday, I'm really curious to see what you thought. If you didn't, it is on our page here, so you can check it out on our Fox 5 DC YouTube page in events. So it's its own video and its own thing. We also post it to our Facebook page as well, so you can check it out there. What do you guys think of that? Any other thoughts or comments about the news today or this week? Please do let me know. We can chat about it. We can comment, answer any questions. And I'll be just bringing you some of the relevant video that I find for you guys to check out today. I'm going to check in with what's going on as Phoenix preps for President Trump and see if I can get some video that they're streaming today. But for now, take a look at the White House, guys, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, who is still on with me? Thanks so much for bearing with us here. I'm Molly Nevola in the digital studio. You're looking at a shot of the White House right behind me. That's a live look at the White House just a few miles down the road from us here in Upper Northwest Washington, D.C. So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us on your lunch break or whatever you're up to, watching our YouTube stream. We're also on our website, fox5dc.com. If you scroll to the bottom, you can play us out there any weekday. We're up in the 11 o'clock hour, and I usually go off in the afternoon trying to break down the day's events, relevant video for you, just make it interesting, and if you have any questions or thoughts, just make it a casual conversation. So thanks for joining me on the stream. Today, I don't know if you guys know this, Bernie Sanders actually had a little rally in at Shawnee State University, and he was basically in Southern Ohio, that is, Portsmouth, and talking about a lot of different things: the healthcare crisis, the opioid crisis, education, and stuff like that. And some people didn't catch it, actually. So this is a video that we have in-house that I'm going to play out for you guys, talking about human rights and affordable healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of people attended the rally, and it sort of hits home for people with those personal struggles in that tri-state area of Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. So let's go over to that rally and check it out. I didn't get a chance to actually watch this one either, but it's relevant and it's today, and I think it got sort of hidden away. So in case you missed this one, we can check in with his rally, like I said, at Shawnee State University. Anybody know that university? I actually don't know too much about it. So I was looking it up, but one of Ohio's, I think, most recent, youngest universities, and that's where he was today. Lots of supporters there behind him. So let's check out that video.
So I appreciate you coming to our community today to listen to the realities that we face every day. Thank you.
Summer, thanks very much. Summer is part of what we call a federally qualified community health center, FQHCs, and I work very hard on those, helping to double the funding of them. And what they do, and they address a real problem in our country, is that in many parts of America, even if you have decent health insurance, you can't gain access to a doctor or a dentist or mental health counseling or low-cost prescription drugs. And that is exactly what FQHCs do. Summer raised a very important issue about Medicaid expansion, something you have done here in the state of Ohio, and Kentucky has done it as well. Many states have not. Question that I want you all to think about. There was a series of bills that Republicans brought forth over the last several months. All of them would have made massive cuts in Medicaid to the tune of some $800 billion. Some of them would have thrown 32 million people off of the health insurance they have, another one 23 million, another one 22 million. Question that we have got to ask, and we can discuss it in a moment. Why is it that the United States of America is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people? All right? Now, I live in Burlington, Vermont. We're 50 miles away from the Canadian border. For decades, in Canada, every man, woman, and child has been guaranteed health care as a right. They spend about 50% per capita on health care compared to what we spend. So the questions that we have got to ask ourselves in communities like this and all over America: number one, should health care be a right? Number two, if it is, how do we develop a cost-effective health care system which guarantees health care to all people? Summer also mentioned a crisis that exists in Ohio, Kentucky, in the state of Vermont, and New Hampshire, virtually all over this country, and I hope we could have some discussion on that as well. And that is the opioid crisis. We are losing in this nation now over 60,000 people every single year from drug overdoses. That's opioids, heroin, etc. Why are so many people succumbing to drugs? How do we prevent it? How do we treat it? I hope we can talk about that as well. Let's welcome now Lisa Mowry, who's a counselor at the Shawnee State Mental Health.
I'm proud and honored to be here today. I'm a clinical counselor and I'm an alumnus from Shawnee State University. I've been in the field of mental health for over 20 years, and I've seen many changes during that time. I began my internship at Shawnee Mental Health Center and River Valley Behavioral Health here in Portsmouth. Since then, I've worked with Children's Services and Scioto County Board of DD, and I've served on the board at the Counseling Center, very proudly. Currently, I'm in private practice, and I contract with Scioto County Probate and Juvenile Court for adoption assessment and guardianship investigations. My experience with mental health services began in my early 20s, working at Comprehensive Care, a mental health center in Lexington, Kentucky, where my husband was attending UK law school. There I witnessed the impact that a therapist can make on the quality of life for children and adults. I did, however, not get to follow that calling immediately as our children came along and my husband's career started to take off. But once my kids were in school, I came back to college at Shawnee, and I've never looked back. I feel like I found my purpose working with people through my capacity as a mental health counselor. As I mentioned, mental health has changed so much since I started practicing. It was once a big secret that no one wanted to talk about. Today, mental health has come out of the shadows, and more people are willing to seek help. That's why I think today is important. The Affordable Care Act and Ohio Medicaid expansion have been a big game changer for so many. In Scioto County in the first year, 5,300 people enrolled in insurance coverage. Significantly, people could seek drug and alcohol treatment and mental health treatment. Many of my clients rely on ACA to meet their medical and behavioral health needs. We cannot afford to go back to anything less than ACA. We must keep moving forward. Here in Scioto County, our challenges are great, but every day I'm heartened by our leaders and our community and the changes that they are working to implement. In my field, we continue to need so many more counselors to work with children and to work with families. I'm proud to be here with Senator Bernie Sanders today, as he has strongly stood in support of quality health care and education for all Americans. Thank you, Senator Sanders, for all your good work, and thank you for coming to Portsmouth today.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and I hope one of the questions that we can discuss, because it bothers me immensely, it's a problem in my state and all over this country, is why do so many people turn to drugs? Why? I mean, I think we'll all end up agreeing we need to put more emphasis and resources into prevention, or we need to put more emphasis into treatment, and we're not doing a particularly good job on that. But why? Why is there such a need for drugs in this country? And I hope we can discuss that. But Lisa, thank you very much for the work you're doing. It's enormously important. And now let's hear from Zach Holbrook. Zach?
Mine's a little more like story time than a professionally prepared speech, but I just kind of wanted to give everybody an insight to the struggles that my wife and I face as special needs parents. On November 19th, 2014, my wife, Elizabeth, and I were blessed to welcome our daughter, Autumn Jane, into the world. As blissful as that may have seemed at first, it wasn't without complication. She struggled in her first hours of life, but the problems eventually subsided, and we were discharged in a pretty reasonable amount of time. However, less than 24 hours at home while nursing, my daughter went into cardiac arrest. We had lost her for at least 20 minutes. She had no pulse, which meant no oxygen or blood to her brain. Took 3 rounds of epinephrine to finally get her back, and she was back, but she was not the same child that she was just an hour prior. She was diagnosed with hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. As time went by, we would also receive diagnoses of epilepsy and cerebral palsy. She's nonverbal, non-ambulatory, tube-fed, and legally blind. She's 100% dependent on my wife and I. We made just enough money to consider ourselves lower middle class, but we were still struggling because of our student debt. Care for Autumn was hard to come by. She's no cakewalk by any means, and my wife was having to routinely miss work to take her to her appointments at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. We decided the best thing for our family was for Elizabeth to leave her job and care for Autumn full-time. We lost our health insurance through my wife's job, unfortunately. We were reduced to living off of my $9 an hour income. Fortunately, Autumn's diagnoses led to her qualification for SSI disability, so that helped a bit, but not much. We were forced to file bankruptcy just to tread water. The most frustrating part is how our income affects Autumn's coverage. She needs Medicaid. It's hard to imagine even an upper middle class family being able to afford her needs. She requires a specialized wheelchair, price tag $11,000. Since January, her pharmacist ran a report for me. He's billed over $13,000 to Medicaid just for her medications to keep her alive. We mistakenly received a bill for her initial life flight, $45,000. Fortunately, Medicaid picked that up. We constantly receive scares anytime we talk about trying to better our family and my wife returning to work. Our measly $42,000 a year was above the threshold, and they wanted to take Autumn's care away.
Okay, guys, apologies for that. Looks like our feed just blacked out from that rally, unfortunately. But that is the coverage that we have of Bernie Sanders from Ohio from earlier this morning. So we took that video in, and I wanted to share that with you guys. If you are still watching on the stream, thanks so much for watching. Hey to my regulars, if you guys are still on, Aaron, or anybody else, Mark, anybody that joined this morning. I am Molly Nevola here in the digital newsroom, bringing you the news of the day from Washington. And you can see Washington right behind me. That's a live look at the White House from our room here. So kind of quiet in our newsroom today. Not a ton going on. Yesterday was the big day, August 21st, guys. Hot, humid day here in DC, but it was also the day of the total solar eclipse. And we had so much fun bringing you that coverage. I wanted to remind you, if you missed it, I just alert you, we put that on all of our platforms. On our
attention stations on Edge Live Channel 1. We're taking you to San Francisco, California. Giving a press conference with House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi.
Today, and we were ready for this event coming up.
Source of this shot is
Nancy
Fox Edge
Pelosi
Live Channel 1
in San Francisco. A planned live event from today, guys. She is going to be joined by some representatives there and local community leaders to commemorate Women's Equality Day. This is in San Francisco. And the launch of the Democrats' new economic agenda entitled A Better Deal, Better Jobs, Better Wages, Better Future. So this is live from San Francisco, Women's Equality Day. Let's check it out.
Prison. That's why it's so great. Some of you are standing up doing fabulous things. And, you know, when we lost the election, I have 3 granddaughters. At that time, they were from 8 to 13. And they cried, and then they went to that Women's March in Washington. And it was like what should be today. They went from tears to these hopeful eyes. Oh, what we're gonna do for us, for our country, and that's what we're celebrating. All of you are about to do this, and You're all going to talk, and these people have already done it, and they're going to do it so much better, 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 and better. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Mimi, for guiding us down the Mimi Silbert pathway. I always think of Mimi when I think of the Gospel of Matthew. I love the work that she does. My daughter Christine is here, and she frequently volunteers at Delancey as a teacher as well. And they remind me of the Gospel of Matthew. You know, we always talk about it as being guidance to us. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, to drink. When I was homeless, you sheltered me. When I was in prison, you visited me. Christ said that. Christ said that. So this is a work of mercy, a work of forgiveness, a work of compassion, a great place to be on the Mimi Silbert pathway. Thank you, Mimi Silbert, for your great leadership. And thank you, Letitia, for allowing her to share your story with us. I'm very honored to co-host today with my colleagues, Barbara Lee and Jackie Spear, come on up here. We're going to have you hear some stories of some women, but they'll have their own words to say. But the three of us are pleased to welcome Rosie Rios. She is the former U.S. Treasurer of the United States and a woman working hard to celebrate not only the equality of women, but the greatness of women on our currency, among other places. Let us all join in welcoming Rosie Rios.
Thank you so much, Leader Pelosi. It is an honor to be here today to join you for such an important week. And I want to say to you personally, thank you for supporting me over 8 years ago when I was nominated by the President to be the Treasurer of the United States. I am forever indebted to you, and I can honestly say it wouldn't have happened without you. So thank you so much. It is absolutely great to be back in the Bay Area. You know, we never realize how lucky we are to come from such a progressive and inclusive community until you leave. And what I realized very quickly when I went to D.C. is just how much the world needs to catch up to what we have here. So even though we are celebrating Equality Day this week, we are far from equal. And you know, I spent almost 8 years putting the portrait of a woman on our Federal Reserve notes for the first time in our country's history. But this is much more than just currency. This is about how women are recognized in our history and everything we see around us. And so for me, there's a much larger issue that we need to really think about here. We need inspirations in order to have aspirations. And now I'm dedicated to writing history, R-I-G-H-T. Dedicated to writing history through my Empowerment 2020 movement. I'm now focused on putting women in leadership positions, in corporate boards, in the C-suite, and in elected office so that we can make structural changes to how decisions are made. And most importantly, I want to change the word equality to equity. This is not just about recognizing our past. This is about paving the way for our future. This is about our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, our nieces, our granddaughters. They are half the population. And if they lose, we all lose. So I want to make the rest of the country, again, catch up to what we have here in the Bay Area, where we have a whole host of leadership here. And I have the pleasure of introducing one of them to you. So I actually had the chance to sit next to Congresswoman Jackie Spear during the height of the financial crisis on a flight from D.C. to San Francisco. So I had about 5 hours of quality time with one of the most interesting women in Congress, and I really, really enjoyed it. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Congresswoman Jackie Spear.
Thank you, Rosie. What she didn't tell you is that when Rosie introduces herself, she doesn't hand you her business card. She hands you a $1 bill, which she signs for you. And I still have that $1 bill that she gave me. So thank you. Thank you for your leadership. To the woman who has always reminded us not to forget the women, our leader, Nancy Pelosi, who knows Abigail Adams and remembers it in everything she says and does, and to my colleague and heroine, Barbara Lee, who had the guts many decades ago to say no to the war in Iraq and is saying no again today. So this is Women's Equality Week, as far as I'm concerned, and we celebrate it on Saturday. I have the great fortune on Saturday to host 2 busloads of high school girls, and we're going to the Rosie the Riveter Museum because it's really important for young girls to know that equality means getting paid the same as men get paid for doing the same job, and that's what the Rosies did during World War II, as you remember. So we are interested in a better deal for women, a better deal for men, for fathers, for mothers, but we're also interested in a real deal. And I say a real deal because we have a president right now who will say lots of different things. For instance, he was going to save 800 jobs at Carrier. Remember that back on the campaign trail? Well, the real deal there was that 632 jobs have gone to Mexico. Or how about the mining jobs? He was going to make sure there were 45,000 mining jobs in this country. There are only 48,000 mining jobs in total, but he was going to create another 45,000. What happened there? Actually, he has created 800 mining jobs since becoming president of the United States. There are more jobs in renewable energy in this country than all the jobs in oil and gas and coal combined. 3 million jobs. So we're interested in better jobs. We're interested in steady jobs. We're interested in better wages. We're interested in a stable economy. We're interested in a better future, and yes, we're interested in a secure future. And that is something that we do not have, I believe, under this presidency. So we just fought back on the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. What does that mean to women and children in this country? Well, if they had succeeded, 22 million Americans would have lost their insurance. And 18 million would have lost their insurance next year if they had succeeded in doing that. Meanwhile, there would have been a $700 billion, count that, $700 billion tax cut to the wealthiest 1% in this country. We said no to that. You all said no to that. And that's why it is not the law today. So I'm about to introduce you to the mother of Megan Chassett. Megan was born with an undiagnosed heart condition and needed emergency surgery within hours of being born. She has quality health care today because of the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of Medi-Cal. Had she not had that, $20 million would have been the price tag of keeping her alive. What we know from the Affordable Care Act is that there's been a reduction in bankruptcies by 50%. That's a real deal. We also know that 80% of those on Medi-Cal in this state and in this country are working families. We want to make sure that that's a better deal and a real deal for all Americans as well. So as I introduce Kristen, I'm also going to be introducing someone who has seen the benefits of family leave in the state. Family leave that we created back in 2002 when I was in the state legislature, giving people, families, 55% of their income for 12 weeks. But here in San Francisco, that has been changed to make sure that you get a full 12 weeks of your full income, thanks to those here in San Francisco. You don't see businesses leaving San Francisco, do you? No, they have embraced the importance of family leave. And we're going to be hearing from Elizabeth Newman, who is the Work Policy and Legislative Director from the San Francisco Department on the Status of Women, and a tireless advocate for family leave, and who has just taken advantage of family leave here in San Francisco. So let me welcome both Kristen and Elizabeth to the microphone.
If you guys are just joining us here on Fox 5 Live from Washington, D.C., we're throwing you over to San Francisco, guys, where there's a Women's Equality Day commemoration, celebration, led by Nancy Pelosi, also some other officials who are there in California today. And this was a pre-planned event, and it's sort of a news conference of sorts to celebrate the new Democratic agenda, to celebrate women and whatnot. We don't see this every day, but they're calling for it to be Women's Equity Day. Of course, it is Women's Equality Day, and they're talking more about a future for women and wages and jobs and everything like that. So let's check in and continue on with this live event happening in San Francisco. I hope you're still joining us on the stream, and feel free to comment with us if you have any thoughts on this, and I'll be here watching along with you guys.
She spent the next 10.5 months in the intensive care unit receiving various treatments for her life-threatening and complex illnesses. Today, she suffers from chronic lung disease and pulmonary hypertension. She breathes with the assistance of a ventilator and supplemental oxygen through a tracheostomy tube. She is fed exclusively through a gastro tube that's inserted directly into her belly. And she receives a continuous infusion of her life-saving pulmonary hypertension drug through a battery-operated pump. Megan takes up to 16 different medications per day. Her pulmonary hypertension medications that keep her alive are very expensive. Thank you. Her pulmonary hypertension medications that keep her alive are very expensive. And thankfully, they are covered by our private insurance. Because of Megan's complex medical needs, she also qualifies for Medicaid as secondary coverage, which gives us the assurance that if we were to lose our private coverage, her medication and her equipment would still be covered. Medicaid covers Megan's multiple therapies and also in-home skilled nursing, which allows us to keep her out of the hospital and safely at home with her older sister. Both the House and Senate Affordable Care Act repeal efforts threaten my family's ability to cover these prescription medications by giving states the option to remove prescription drug benefit coverage as an essential health benefit, and by deeply cutting Medicaid funding. What's more, my daughter was born with a pre-existing condition. As the Congresswoman mentioned, her health bills and medical bills are in the tens of millions of dollars, well past even the most generous plan in the pre-Obamacare days. So while healthcare has tipped in our favor in July, our president has promised us that the fight is not over. I will not wait in the wings for the other shoe to drop, and I will continue to fiercely advocate for the two most important beings in my life. My husband and I have met many families throughout our journey with Megan who are not as fortunate as we are. The cost of prescription medication is a constant and unmanageable financial strain. There is still much work to be done, and let our collective voices continue to be heard. A better deal will give Megan the opportunity to move past her medical challenges and have a future where she is defined not by her diagnosis, but by her accomplishments. Thank you, Leader Pelosi. Good morning. Thank you to Leader Pelosi and the Congresswomen for having me here to share my experience. My name is Elizabeth Newman, and I am a new mother to my beautiful 5-month-old baby boy named Caleb. I recently returned to work from parental leave, and although I love my job and I was very excited to be back, maternity leave was so essential for both me and my baby. I'm so thankful to live in California, to be eligible for pregnancy disability insurance and the paid family leave program, and to work for the city and county of San Francisco, an employer that supplemented the partial wage replacement of the state programs to provide me with 4 months of fully paid parental leave. During the final weeks of my pregnancy, when I was past my due date and worrying about my impending labor and the health of my baby and my own well-being, I never had to worry about whether we would be able to pay our rent or buy diapers. When I was pregnant, I knew that I wanted to return to work eventually, but once this new little person was in my arms and looking up at me, all I wanted to do was be absorbed in him, and I couldn't even think about the world outside. Paid leave gave us the opportunity to focus on each other during this critical time in both of our lives, to ensure that this precious newborn was cared for and that he was always going to know I would be there for him. I also needed the time to adjust to my own new life and to recover from my delivery. It took Caleb and I 2 months to successfully establish breastfeeding. It took even longer to really build that bond between a mother and child, an attachment that will serve us and be so valuable in the future as he grows to be independent. We had barely reached something resembling a predictable schedule when I returned to work. The transition was challenging, but I know that what I'm doing is right for us, and I'm not sure I could have said that if I would have had to return to work any earlier. Caleb is now at home with his dad, and my husband is now having the chance to develop a deeper bond and be a more confident, capable caregiver to our baby and a better partner to me. His job doesn't offer any paternity leave, and so the California Paid Family Leave program is even more critical to our family's financial security. With our new addition has come bigger bills. Our rent has increased since we moved from a 1 to a 2-bedroom. Next month, Caleb starts daycare, and our monthly expenses will increase by 50%. But paid family leave has allowed us to plan for this, and it has provided a strong start for our family, both emotionally and financially. I cannot imagine how that would be possible if we didn't have access to it. I'm proud of California and San Francisco for leading the way on paid family leave, but it shouldn't matter where a family lives. In the U.S., every parent and every baby deserves the kind of start that we had. It's unbelievable that families are expected to care for a new life and face the increased cost of a child without the support of paid family leave. We need a better deal for women and their families now. Thank you.
We thank Kristen and Elizabeth for sharing their stories with us. Matter of housekeeping, staff, can we bring this chair over here for Mimi, please? I keep asking her to go sit down there, but she hasn't been doing that. As we have this interval here, before I bring on our colleague, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, let me salute our mutual colleague, Congresswoman Jackie Spear. She has been a champion in the state legislature and in the Congress on issues that relate to equality, equity for women, and so many other things. She has been a champion on national security for our country. And so whether we're talking about protecting people in terms of their health benefits or protecting them in terms of the security of our nation, on the Intelligence Committee, she has been a champion, a protector of consumers. I want everybody to know that, because when we talk about Women's Equality Day, we're not just talking about a concept of equality. We're talking about an idea of full-fledged commitment to women having all of the opportunity that our country needs us to have and that we fully deserve. Jackie Spear has been a champion in every regard. Thank you, Jackie Spear. Thank you. And she has worked very hard with all of you here and bringing her kids over to see her students there to see Rosie the Riveter. We had them in the office on one of the many observances and celebrations of Rosie the Riveter. They were champions. They were making equal pay for equal work, doing our nation's security such a long time ago. So Jackie introduced the two of our special guests, Kristen and Elizabeth, to talk about family and health care and family leave, which is very, very important to our country. Now I'm going to turn the program over to Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She, too, a member of the state legislature where she worked on so many issues, came to the Congress, like Jackie, effective from the start on these issues. She has been a champion in protecting people in their neighborhoods, protecting our country, as well as in the Appropriations Committee, investing in other signs of the strength of our country, the health, the education, and the well-being of the American people. Please welcome Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Thank you very much. Let me thank our Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, for bringing us together today to celebrate, really, and to really remind us once again how far we've come, but how far we must go. And I just have to say to Leader Pelosi that she was the greatest speaker ever. You know, we would not have the Affordable Care Act if it weren't for Leader Pelosi. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, being a woman in many states constituted a pre-existing condition, and she took care of that for us. So thank you so much, Leader Pelosi. Also to my friend and colleague, Congresswoman Jackie Spear. Yes, we served in the legislature together, and I tell you, Jackie has stayed vigilant. As we say, she stays woke, and she stays very focused on doing the right thing on behalf of women, on behalf of our economy, on behalf of our country. And she's never wavered. And it's so wonderful to be able to serve with her now in Congress. Also, to Rosie, let me just say how good it is to see you. Rosie is a good friend from many, many years ago, and as a constituent, hopefully one day you'll be back home, but we continue to work on a variety of issues related to women and women's equality, even in her current capacity. And Mimi, let me tell you how inspired I am to be here with you, my sister. Just being here gives me what I need to keep fighting the good fight, and to know what you continue to do with your life and your brilliance and your spirit is just really amazing. I'm so happy to be here with you. So happy. As we mark Women's Equality Day, we have to recognize that women are not equal when it comes to the workplace and wages. That's why one of the main goals of the Better Deal Agenda is expanding economic benefits across our nation, especially for women who make up half of our workforce and are the primary or sole earners of 40% of households with children under 18. Despite that, women still earn only 78 cents for every dollar earned by men, and for women of color, it's even worse. African American women earn 63 cents compared to men, and Latinas earn only 54 cents. These numbers, quite frankly, are disgraceful. As anyone who lives in the Bay Area knows, especially if you're trying to raise a family, every dollar counts. More than 2/3 of workers in low-wage jobs are women, and nearly half are women of color. Many of these women are supporting families. Women are more likely than men to live in poverty, and more than 20% of Latina and African American women living below the federal poverty line in 2016. And so it's a moral imperative and a matter of civil rights that we raise the wages of women earning the lowest wages in our economy. We must do that. And that's why the Better Deal agenda is focused on improving economic opportunity and raising wages for all workers and providing a real living wage for all. We also know if we're going to create more job opportunities, we have to invest in small businesses. Small business investment actually creates jobs, unlike tax cuts for wealthy corporations, which are just passed along to shareholders. And before I introduce the two phenomenal young women, I just want to mention one thing that the president has done. He talks incessantly about his support for small businesses, but his actions show a different side. His budget proposal would actually eliminate the Economic Development Administration and the Minority Business Development Agency. Two agencies that directly support small businesses and that many business owners in the Bay Area support and rely on. And so it's very important on this day to really focus and raise our voices against what is being done through this Trump administration in terms of really dismantling much of our efforts for equal pay for women and equal rights for women. I want to just say to the women who have already spoken how moved I am by your stories, and thank you for your bravery and for being bold enough to be here today. It was really very moving to listen to what they had to say. I have the pleasure to introduce two women now, and I just have to say I'm so pleased to be able to introduce them because it's almost like I see myself in the day and in them. First, Mia Velez, owner of Ryzen Kids Castro. Now, she opened a family child care business as a creative way to find affordable child care for their daughter. When I was in college, could not afford child care. I wish I had had the creative spirit that you have to have started a daycare center. Let me tell you, she put her daughter in child care, and that was going to cost the same amount by working that she would have made by working. So she knew that she had to be creative. And so she has now a waiting list of 35 children. 35 children. So that is just really a story to behold and a story to be told. Michelle Pusateri. Where's Michelle? Pusateri. Pusateri. She is the owner of Nana's Joe's Granola. For Michelle, granola was something that was first born of necessity before it grew into a bona fide field business. She's a former pastry chef who trained at the Culinary Institute of America at Greystone in St. Helena and has worked at a number of San Francisco institutions. And I know, as a former small business owner, the barriers and the real, in many ways, a lot of discrimination in the private sector as it relates to women, but she's done it. And so I am so pleased that she's here with us today to tell us how she is doing it, because these two individuals are unbelievable examples of women's equality and women's rights and what they have done in spite of the barriers that exist. So thank you again very much.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, San Francisco. And thank you, Speaker Pelosi. It is an honor to be here to share my story. My name is Mia Velez. My husband Owen and I run RZK Castro, a small family home daycare. And I represent the millions of parents that hope for a better world for their children. A world where families are cared for by their communities, where people are connected to and care about the environment, where parents can raise their kids without the financial pressure to force them back to work. A healthy society, if you will. But this is not the world that we live in today, and in light of recent events, it doesn't seem like we're heading in that direction. But like Speaker Pelosi, I still believe we can offer a better deal for our children and generations to follow. At RZK, we aim to develop a sense of community, foster a relationship with nature, and cultivate compassion. We provide a loving family structure for the kids while their parents are off to work. And for the two raised by single moms, my husband provides a male figure that is involved in child rearing duties. They are very much part of our household, growing up like siblings as we cook, we play, we garden, and enjoy the city together. Yes, the hours are long. There's a lot of mess to clean up, some fighting, and a good amount of crying, sometimes by the kids. But at the end of the day, our hearts are full and our purpose fulfilled. I can honestly say, I love my job. But actually, that's not what Owen and I had planned to do with our lives. A year and a half ago, we lived in Pennsylvania with our two children, one of which is right here. And we taught yoga and Kung Fu. Then our sister Kung Fu school, located here in Soma, called us up and invited us to come here and open a daycare as their way to assist with a childcare crisis in San Francisco. So we packed up and drove across country with our two kids. We barely moved in when we opened RZK Castro, working with my husband out of our home in a city where we didn't know anyone. The experience was isolating, and it definitely tested our marriage. But things started to change when we found Children's Council of San Francisco. Through them, we were connected to a wealth of resources to help our family and our business, to include Parent Voices, which has become our lifeline community. Through Parent Voices, we realized how important our work is to the health of our society. So today, our program continues to evolve and our waiting lists continue to grow. Our list right now is at 35 and inquiries continue to come in. And as much as we want to help all these families, we are just one daycare. San Francisco has done a lot to support my family and our business, but more needs to be done. We need quality, affordable childcare for all families. We need programs and incentives to encourage others to open home daycares like we did. Starting with these, we can have a better world for our children and perhaps for ourselves too. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Pusateri, and I am the founder of Nana Joe's Granola. Nana Joe's Granola is a women-owned and operated granola bar, and snack company that was born from a need to bring back whole food ingredients into packaged foods to grocery store shelves and to your breakfast table. All our products are free of refined cane sugars, additives, and preservatives. We believe breakfast should nourish your body and your mind and carry you through to lunchtime. We bake our granola every single week to ensure the highest nutritional content and a fresh out of the oven flavor, texture, and crunch. Along with our local ingredient sourcing and our incredible product integrity, we believe in community before profit. At Nana Joe's Granola, we make everything by hand, employing people, not machines, in turn enriching our products as well as employing for our local community, driving our local economy. Our focus is thriving as a community-driven business by taking care of our employees to ensure they never have to work another entry-level position again. We teach and train each employee, giving them tools to excel in the food manufacturing sector. Every one of the women who work for us all started out as dishwashers and now are specialized in different sections of the business, from lead packing expert to production manager to lead scaling expert. We recently implemented an employee ownership program which offers our employees extra incentive to put their heart and soul into the business they are helping to build. We have very low employee turnover and work hard to foster a positive, supportive environment where everyone's input matters. We pride ourselves in taking care of each employee individually and making sure they are well respected by the entire team and treated like part of the family. Since 2012, we've had 7 pregnancies with the help of a better deal. My hope is that small businesses can get support and tax credits for paid maternity leave during the most important nurturing months, as we've heard, of both the parents' and child's lives. Yeah. We have seen an uptick in local family-owned businesses whose main drive and support is to support the people who live in the areas close to their facilities. By utilizing the training programs and tax credits that will be available through a better deal, we as a small business owners will be provided more support to thrive and to grow, providing livable wages without huge financial strain larger corporations are financially prepared to accommodate. As business owners, we have so much to give by teaching community members new skills so they can advance and become financially stable and not just working paycheck to paycheck, so they can evolve with an ever-changing work environment and economy. In the end, we strengthen our communities within, and everybody benefits with the help of our government that is for all people.
I was tempted to just rip this open and pass it around. Nana Joe's gluten-free granola. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Mia. When we hear from our very special guests today, our VIPs, Mia and Michelle, Kristen, and Elizabeth, we see a sign of strength of America. Just speaking practically from the standpoint of the economy, women-owned businesses are the fastest growing component of our economy. So when Mia and Michelle courageously set out to do what they're doing, can you think of anything that requires more optimism than starting a small business? Maybe getting married, I'm not sure. You might have some guarantees there, maybe. But starting a small business, the courage of it all, and women-owned businesses, minority women-owned business, the fastest growing element in our economy. So this is not just about their personal story. That would be justification enough. It's about making America's economy stronger. And I'm reminded of Rosie here, the treasurer. Her name, Rosie Rios, on every piece of currency when she was the treasurer of the United States. A woman's name on our currency, and now she's putting women's faces on our currency. So this connection about recognizing what women do for our country in every possible way. The stories that we heard from, of course, Kristen's story about her child having a pre-existing condition, having no limits on the care, the insurance that her baby will receive. All of that is important to her child, her family. But it's also important to America because it is a right, not a privilege, that she have access to that. And I thank her because it was voices like hers that were what changed the thinking on Capitol Hill. We would not have had the success in defeating the skinny budget, the fat budget, the budget, the bill now, the health care bill now, 2 years later. Well, they had, Stephen Colbert had a rerun last night. He said, having a health care bill where you say we're going to end it now, but we're not going to replace it for 2 more years. It's like saying you're tearing out the bathroom in your house and saying to your family, you don't have a bathroom. Well, he said it more crudely. You don't have a bathroom for 2 more years. Anyway, just the ridiculousness of it all. We're talking about strength. We're talking about health. We're not just talking about health care. We're talking about a healthier America. Thank you to Kristen for being such a strong, courageous voice in that regard. And Elizabeth talked about the need for affordable child care and what that means. If we're going to fully unleash the power of women in the workplace, we absolutely must follow your lead, Elizabeth, on that. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now I heard the voices being acknowledged. The pin is here, parent voices, and yay, parent voices. And as we always say with parents' voices, children learning, parents earning. Children learning, parents earning. This is so very important, the connection between our investments in the care of our children when they are young, when they are little, preschool, in fact, to the success of their families economically. So that takes us to the better deal. And the better deal, I just want to say this to you because you'll be hearing more about it. It's about better jobs. The better deal is about better jobs, better wages, better future, higher pay. That means, as Barbara Lee said, equal pay for equal work, at the very least, as Jackie indicated with Rosie the River. Higher pay, equal pay, lower cost to people. Well, let's see, one thing we could lower costs is prescription drugs. Lowering the cost of prescription drugs and ending drug price gouging is a way to lower costs for families. Monopolies, crack down on big corporate mergers that hurt consumers, workers, and competition. That helps to lower costs when we stop that. And again, tools for the 21st century, to have the apprenticeships, to have the investments in education. When our colleagues say we have to cut the investments in education to reduce the deficit, nothing could be dumber than that. Stiff competition for the worst idea that they have. There's mother competition for it. But nothing, an economist will tell you, nothing brings more money to the Treasury than investing in the education of the American people. Early childhood, K through 12 higher education, lifetime learning for our workers. And that takes us to the essence of the better deal. Lifetime learning, connection between needs in our workplace and skills of our workers. We recognize 6 million jobs are unfilled right now because people have not been matched up with them and their skills have not been, and half of them do not require a college degree. So we have to just make a decision to have a better deal for the American people and a better deal for America. So we thank you all for coming, because as we celebrate Women's Equality Week, as Jackie has just declared it, we have to recognize it's not just about the idea of equality and equity, that small business ownership brings us to that equity ownership. It's not just about that, although that's important. I always tell the story that when women won the right to vote, which is what we will celebrate this year, the headlines in the paper said, "Women given the right to vote." No such thing. No such thing. Women fought, women starved, women were starved, women marched, women did so many things to get the right to vote. Now we just have to make sure that everyone does vote. And what we're hoping to do with a better deal is to show the connection between what happens at the ballot box and what happens in their lives. Martin Luther King said it best: the ballot, legislation, your life. The connection is a real one. And we have to recognize that if you don't vote, you don't count. If they think you don't count, they'll ignore what you have to say. So again, when we celebrate the Equal Rights Week, we acknowledge the greatness of the suffragists, but we also know that the work goes on that they set us on to. They didn't just want us to have the right to vote. They wanted us to have the right to a better future, which the better deal guarantees. Thank you all very much for coming. Let us thank our guests. Let us thank our guests for their wonderful presentations. And let us thank all of you, so many of you always being there for America's working families. Thank you all very much.
Well, there you go, guys. I think that is the shot of the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. They're down by the water, by the Embarcadero, if you know the area. Oh, I thought it was freezing on me, but a long one there, but celebrating Women's Equality Day, Women's Equity Day. Pelosi, we heard from Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee in California, and some others there. And that will wrap up, I think, our live coverage today. Let's take it back inside. Yeah, we're just going to bump shot of the White House. I am super excited to be here with you guys. Molly Nevola in the digital studio. Thanks for joining me and for engaging with us and staying on the stream. I hope this was fun for you to watch during your midday. And we're going to be on again tomorrow as usual, Fox 5 Live here. If you need to get in touch with me, my information is there on the screen as well. And if you have any thoughts or comments about today's show or yesterday, feel free to leave them here. You can always tweet at us as well and get at our Instagram too, Fox5DC. All of our web stories updated on our website, fox5dc.com, and our Facebook page as well, guys. So that's going to be it. It's almost, it's about 2:30 right now. We'll see you again tomorrow, starting in the 11 o'clock hour with the news of the day. So thanks for joining us, guys. Yeah, we'll see you then. We'll leave you with the shot of this super hot and humid day in DC. Hopefully it changes a little bit for us next week. But yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, guys. Take care. Have a great Tuesday.